Hello there. Peace. Larry Podzoid at you again. So we've got to cover this very quickly because the camera gets out of sync with the audio and video after about 15 minutes. This has to be shorter than that. So where were we? So some will call this radically blasphemous, blasphemously radical or something, you know, and other people will look at this and say, and other people will say, that's a public service announcement. And I would say, this is just a piece of obscure history that you won't find anywhere else unless you're really bent on looking for it, like I've been over 10 years ago with the internet becoming what it became. I was able to research these things myself, along with read books, as I showed you previously. Part 2, those are good books worth reading. Flashbacks by Timothy Leary, his autobiography, and Albert Hoffman's LSD, My Problem Child. If you want to know more about LSD, you should read those books. But the only other thing left to say is that so the CIA did their famous MK Ultra mind control studies using LSD, and who knows what they learned. You know, I mean, this is not about MK Ultra mind control studies. But if you want to know about that, type the word without spaces MK Ultra and the word CIA before or after it in Google, and you'll find plenty of things to research yourself with to death, or to the end. You know, I mean, the way that internet just keeps you there glued to it. You know, better than TV ever sucked me in. So they did that, but to the point was, before the CIA existed, there was the intelligence division in the United States was known as the OSS, I read. And I don't know what that stands for, I forget. But the OSS studied not LSD, which became legal or discovered later, but before that they were interested in cannabis, what is slangly called marijuana. That's a slang word for cannabis. And the OSS made a clear, odorless, colorless, smellless, odorless, tasteless liquid concentrate out of the cannabis stuff in that plant. And they used it at first. They thought they could use it to give to prisoners to interrogate them, and they found out that didn't work well, so that they later used it to give to their own operatives to take in case they got captured, to disorient them enough to where they couldn't give away secrets. But that didn't work well either. So then the CIA came along and the MK Ultra mind control, and who knows what they learned. But anyway, but the point of this is, why is cannabis become illegal? This is 2016. Next year will make 80 years ago, 1937, when doing what we've heard in more recent years they do on the Capitol Hill in Washington, closed-door sessions of Congress where money exchanges hands and big corporations and businesses get what they want. Well, this is what happened in 1937. The senators, congressmen, whoever, are long dead, I guess, by now, so we're not talking about anybody living who's responsible for this. They have to be 100 years old. But in 1937, there was a closed-door session of Congress. You can research this. The older guys told me this years ago, but I've researched it on my own and checked it out on the internet. But the closed-door session of Congress called by the Congress to have a meeting with the Hearst newspaper companies, Forge family, and the DuPont Chemical Company, and the lumberjack industry. The DuPont company learned how to invent a chemical procedure to keep wood paper from turning yellow. Prior to that, only cannabis paper was not yellow. Our Declaration of Independence is written on it. So is our Constitution, if it's a matter of fact. And so George Washington grew it and made paper out of it, and fine fabrics and other things, and rope, and all kind of things. And so there's references to some of his writings that he was waiting to enjoy some of the crop when he got home from Valley Forge or wherever he was at the time. But so this was legal all throughout history until 1937. So in order to keep the newspapers flowing from the lumberjack industry, they greased the palms of these congressmen, whoever they were, to make cannabis paper illegal, cannabis period illegal, and that's all it was over. Check it out yourself in history, and that's what it's about. A closed-door session of Congress, money changing hands, cannabis becoming illegal, and it was known as the Yellow Press. I can remember it from grade school, but they didn't talk about cannabis, but it was known as the Yellow Press when they discovered how to keep newspaper from turning yellow. And that's why they made cannabis illegal. And so I have a friend that tells me, a female friend, that says they invented pantyhose at the same time, and that was why it became illegal. So was there cannabis? They can make fabric out of it. Was it cannabis pantyhose before there were nylon or polyester, whatever it is, that they invented, and that's why cannabis was made illegal. So a few years later, in 1941, I believe, it was in the December, I think, or November issue of Popular Mechanics, Henry Ford's dream was to build a car he could grow from the ground. So he found a way to take the resin in the cannabis plant and the fibers in the stalks and stems and stuff, and compact them and mix them together and put them under heat plate pressure and pressure cook them into a substance 10 times stronger than steel. So he built his car illegally, Henry Ford, in 1941, and everything on it was made from metal made from cannabis, including the engine block, except the frame of the car was actual iron, steel or whatever, you know. But everything else was made from cannabis. So he did it just to prove a point that you could do this, and that car probably sits in some secure place today, I'm sure, but taken away by somebody or put somewhere in Detroit, who knows. But you can research that too, Henry Ford's cannabis marijuana car or whatever on the internet. So there was that. So that's all that's behind it being illegal. Now, when at the closed-door session of Congress, I want to say, they didn't notify anybody. They put a sign outside of Congress, and they notified the American Medical Association, who sent a representative with a stack of books this high as to why they should keep it legal, because 50% of their medicines contained it as a component in it at the time. And this was in 1937. So, but it fell on deaf ears, and the only other person to show up was somebody who saw the sign posted out front, who was traveling through, and he was supposed to be a birdseed salesman who sold marijuana bird seeds. He said, if you make it illegal, I'll be out of business. There were the only two people to show up at the closed-door session to protest this, who were notified of it. You know, it was otherwise closed-door session of Congress. So the American Medical Association, they said half our medicine is made from this. You can't make it illegal, but they did. So now, today, in 2016, for years, a couple of decades almost, research has been going on somewhere where it's been legal, or not, I don't know, but a good source of medical marijuana, cannabis information on the internet, you have to be 21 in order to enter this website. If you're not 21, don't not enter this website. But it's called leafly.com, Leafly.com, Leafly, Leafly.com. That's a source of medical cannabis information. There's something like 5,500 or 5,800 different strains of the plant. Each one has different medical characteristics. It's all on there. You know, so if you want to research this, you can research it. You can read it. It's legal to read. It doesn't matter where you live. You can read. I mean, you have the right to think for yourself, and you know, and put two and two together in your head and say, well, gee, you know, this was legal until 1937. Half the medicines were made from it. It was illegal for 50, 70 years before they went back to studying it, and now it's like going to be 80 years. And so another point I wanted to make was, are we under 15 minutes? I don't know. We're getting there. So the American people were wrong when this was taken away from us. Now, I wonder what Bernie Sanders would say about that in this year's presidential election, you know, if he were president. In my opinion, the way I was raised by World War II veterans, and being my parents' generation, and World War I veterans being my grandparents' generation, you know, the way I was raised to believe in America and what it is to be an American, any American president who would not restore the rights of the people to have cannabis as a medicine, and the word recreational is wrong. It should be personal use. That gives the wrong connotation. Everybody on a hoopla party, you know. If you want to do that, that's fine too, as long as you don't bother nobody or cause no problem, you know. But like they said in the 70s, you can do what you want to do as long as it doesn't disturb anybody else from doing what they want to do, and nobody else can. You know, then it works both ways, you know. I mean, among people in a democracy, you know, and of individuals, we have individual thoughts and individual thinkers, and that's just the way it is. So you can call me blasphemous, you can judge me, you can call me radical, you can judge me, you can call me anti-American or against the government. I really don't want to be called that because I'm not that. But that's the points I believe I wanted to cover. Now the camera's going to be out of sync, so it'll have to stay on for a while to catch up with the audio. Otherwise it'll cut it off at some random place. So what might we do to entertain you? Well, I let the camera on off the audio. Is that everything I wanted to say? So it's not really radical. It's more of a public service announcement. And time to go, time to go, time to go, time to go. Did that resync the video with the audio? I don't know. Stop this. How do we stop this camera? Okay, part 3, part 2, part B or whatever, part 3, 3B, 2B, or not 2B. That was a question to ask a philosopher of me. So we forgot to talk about the biblical connection, the Judeo-Christian biblical connection of cannabis. Now, different Hebrew translations exist, and you can research this on the internet like I did. And the Hebrew word, one Hebrew word is Kineboisin, Kinboisin, for cannabis in the Bible. Now they say there are references in the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, where Moses left the land of Egypt and went into the desert to look for Israel or whatever, and he took like 275 or 750 shekels worth of Kinboisin with him on camelback. And so they used it in those days, and then a couple of years later I looked again for that type of subject matter on the internet, and I found, I didn't catch the chapter and verse, don't ask me chapter and verse, but it said that they had a formula, a chemical formula that they manufactured the Kinboisin into a potent oil, an anointing oil they anointed the high priest with, that was psychoactive and absorbed through the skin, and so they were actually high in more than one way with God, and with closer to God with cannabis, is what you find if you look in the Bible for cannabis. Other religions, I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into that. Had the time for the detail involved in these kind of things, but I wanted to add that into this. So the King James Version misinformedly translates it as calamus, C-A-L something M-U-S. That's supposed to mean something different. So research that in different versions, translations of your Bibles. You can go to universities and have 30 different translations available at your disposal, or with the internet you've got that nowadays, right? So, but yeah, so that's what it was made into an oil. In Exodus, it was where they left with that many. It's on the internet, chapter and verse. Don't ask me chapter and verse. Don't judge me. I'm not trying to be anti-God or anti-religion or anti-non-religion or anti-non-God or whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to be anything but myself and be me and carry on peaceably and survive with my paranoid schizophrenia acting up and causing me to call the CIA again. So now I make these videos and say peace. I know the lady's name who was assigned to me, and I'm not going to say it, but I hope you're well. You certainly did impress me and help me find myself later in life. The CIA I'm talking to. So anyway, peace to be all, and we'll see where the video cuts off at the end of this one again. And do we want to try to sync it up again here a little bit more? Can you hear this actually playing in the room? What else do we got to play here? Wait a minute.